A racist landlord humiliates a black female tenant, unaware of who the tenant's father is. Nia Carter stood in front of the bathroom sink, her hands submerged in soapy water as she scrubbed a stubborn stain. The gentle hum of the radiator filled the small apartment, a comforting backdrop to her otherwise quiet morning. Sunlight streamed through the window, illuminating the peeling paint on the walls and the faded photographs that adorned the shelves. Nia had decorated the space with memories of her childhood, a reminder of where she came from, and the dreams she was still chasing. As she rinsed the sponge, a loud gurgle echoed from the pipes below. Nia paused, her heart sinking. This was the third time in as many weeks that the plumbing had acted up. She wiped her hands on a towel, glancing at the clock. It was already 10 in the morning, and she needed to address the issue before it escalated further. She took a deep breath, steeling herself for the confrontation that lay ahead. Nia grabbed her phone and dialed the number of Mr. Caldwell, her landlord. The phone rang ominously, each tone a reminder of the disdain she felt for the man who had held the title of landlord for far too long. After what felt like an eternity, he picked up. "Caldwell Properties." His voice dripped with disinterest. "Mr. Caldwell, it's Nia Carter from apartment 4B. I'm having plumbing issues again. The sink is backing up, and I'm afraid it might worsen if it's not fixed soon." "Didn't I just fix that?" he replied, irritation evident in his tone. "You young people don't know how to take care of things. I'll send someone over, but you should really learn to be more responsible." Nia clenched her jaw, anger bubbling to the surface. "I appreciate it, but I assure you, I'm doing my best here." "Sure, whatever you say," he replied dismissively before hanging up. She exhaled sharply, her frustration morphing into determination. Nia wasn't going to let his condescension get to her. She put on her shoes and headed downstairs, intending to confront him in person if necessary. The lobby of the apartment complex was dimly lit, with worn carpets and outdated decor that spoke of better days long gone. As Nia approached Mr. Caldwell's office, she noticed a few other tenants lingering nearby, their expressions a mix of curiosity and concern. They had likely overheard her conversation, and she felt the weight of their eyes on her as she knocked on the office door. "Come in," Mr. Caldwell's voice boomed. Nia opened the door and stepped inside, her heart racing. The office smelled of stale coffee and cheap cologne. Mr. Caldwell sat behind a desk, cluttered with paperwork, his balding head gleaming under the fluorescent lights. He looked up, a smirk creeping across his face. "What do you want now?" he asked, leaning back in his chair with an air of superiority. "Mr. Caldwell, I wanted to follow up on the plumbing issue," Nia began, trying to keep her voice steady. "It's really becoming a problem, and I'd appreciate your help in getting it sorted out." "Help?" he laughed, shaking his head. "You know, Nia, if you spent more time working and less time complaining, maybe you wouldn't have these issues. Maybe you should learn to keep your place clean." Nia felt her cheeks flush with embarrassment and anger. "With all due respect, sir, I'm doing my best to take care of my home, but I can't fix plumbing issues on my own." "You're right, you can't," he replied, his tone dripping with sarcasm. "Maybe you should have thought about that before moving into a place like this. You know, this neighborhood isn't for everyone." The other tenants in the lobby shifted uncomfortably. Nia noticed a few of them exchanging glances, their expressions reflecting sympathy and anger on her behalf. She could feel the heat rising in her chest, a mixture of humiliation and resolve. "Mr. Caldwell," she said, her voice firm despite her trembling hands, "this isn't just about me. You have a responsibility to all your tenants, and this type of treatment is unacceptable." "Unacceptable?" he scoffed, leaning forward. "You think you can talk to me like that? You're just a tenant, Nia. You don't run this place. I do." Nia took a step back, her heart pounding. "And I'm a person deserving of respect. You may see me as just a tenant, but I'm not going to let you treat me or anyone else like this. Not anymore." Mr. Caldwell's expression shifted, a flicker of irritation crossing his face. "You think you're the only one with problems? Everyone here has issues. You don't see me going around complaining to everyone, do you?" "Because you're in a position of power," Nia shot back, her voice rising. "It's easy for you to ignore our struggles when you're collecting rent checks every month. But we deserve better." The tension in the room was palpable. Nia could feel the weight of the other tenants' gazes, a mix of support and disbelief. Mr. Caldwell's face turned a shade of crimson, and for a moment she thought he might explode. You're lucky to be here, he finally spat, his voice low and dangerous. You think you're special? You're not. You're just another tenant in a building I own, so you better watch how you speak to me. Naya stood her ground, fueled by a sudden wave of courage. I won't be intimidated by you anymore, Mr. Caldwell. This isn't just about me. It's about everyone who has felt your wrath. I will not let you silence me or anyone else. With that, she turned and walked out of the office, her heart racing. The other tenants watched her leave, and she could sense their support, even if unspoken. As she stepped into the sunlight, the weight of the confrontation hung heavy in the air, but Naya felt a spark of empowerment igniting within her. Naya's phone buzzed in her pocket. She pulled it out, glancing at the screen. It was a message from her friend, Jada, asking if they could meet later for coffee. Naya typed a quick response, her mind racing. She knew she needed to strategize how to tackle Mr. Caldwell's behavior, not just for herself, but for all the tenants who had been subjected to his tyranny. As she walked to the nearby cafe, the weight of her encounter with Mr. Caldwell lingered in her thoughts. She had confronted him, yes, but she needed a plan. She couldn't fight this battle alone. The community needed to stand together against the injustices they faced. Naya entered the cafe, the familiar aroma of coffee enveloping her. She spotted Jada at a corner table, waving her over. Naya took a deep breath, ready to share her experience and rally support. Hey, Nia, what's up? Jada greeted, her face lighting up with concern as Nia sat down. You won't believe what just happened, Nia said, her voice low yet charged with emotion. I confronted Mr. Caldwell about the plumbing issue, and it turned into a full-blown argument. Jada leaned in, her interest piqued. What did he say? Naya recounted the confrontation, her emotions spilling out as she spoke. She shared the feeling of humiliation mixed with empowerment, the anger that had surged within her, and the support she sensed from the other tenants. As she finished, Jada's expression shifted from concern to determination. We need to do something about this, Naya. You shouldn't have to face him alone. There are other tenants who feel the same way. We can organize a meeting and bring this to light. Naya nodded, her heart racing with the possibilities. You're right. It's time to stand up, not just for me, but for everyone who's been mistreated. We can't let him get away with this. Naya took a sip of her coffee, the warmth spreading through her as she felt the adrenaline from her earlier encounter slowly wear off. We could gather everyone in the community room, she suggested, her mind racing with ideas. I can draft a flyer, and we can invite everyone to share their experiences. Jada nodded, her enthusiasm contagious. Yes, we can create a safe space for everyone to voice their concerns. Maybe we can even contact a local advocacy group for advice on tenant rights. Exactly, Naya replied, feeling a surge of hope. If we stand together, Mr. Caldwell won't be able to dismiss us anymore. He thinks he can intimidate me because I'm just one tenant. But if we unite... Her voice trailed off as the weight of her words sank in. The two friends spent the next hour brainstorming ideas, jotting down notes on napkins as they fueled their passion for change. Naya felt a sense of purpose blossoming within her, igniting a fire that had long been dormant. As they wrapped up their meeting, Naya glanced at her watch. I should get going. I want to prepare those flyers before the end of the day. Let me help you with that, Jada offered, pulling out her phone. I can post about the meeting on social media and get the word out to our friends. Great idea, Naya smiled, her spirits lifting. They parted ways outside the cafe, and Nia felt lighter, as if a heavy burden had been lifted from her shoulders. Back at her apartment, Naya gathered her materials. She pulled out her laptop and began drafting the flyer. Her fingers flying over the keyboard, she poured her heart into the message. A call to action, an invitation for tenants to come together and share their experiences, and a reminder that they deserved respect and dignity within their homes. As the sun began to set, she printed out the flyers and carefully taped them to the bulletin board in the lobby. The bright colors and bold letters shouted for attention, a stark contrast to the dull, faded surroundings. Naya hoped they would catch the eyes of her neighbors, that they would feel compelled to stand alongside her. The next day, anticipation buzzed in the air as Naya arrived home from work. She found a small crowd gathered in the lobby, murmurs of concern and solidarity echoing off the walls. Nia's heart raced as she approached, encouraged by the sight of her fellow tenants. Hey, everyone, Naya called out, her voice steady despite her nerves. I see you all received the flyers. Thank you for coming. The group nodded, and she could sense their eagerness to share their stories. Among them, she recognized Mrs. Davidson, an elderly woman who had lived in the complex for over 20 years, and Jamal, a young father who often struggled to make rent. "Mr. Caldwell has been treating us all poorly," Naya continued, her voice gaining momentum. "We can't let him get away with this any longer. If we unite, we can demand the respect we deserve." As she spoke, Naya felt the energy in the room shift. The tenants nodded along, murmurs of agreement rippling through the crowd. She could see the determination in their eyes, a shared frustration that had finally found a voice. Jamal stepped forward, his brow furrowed with worry. "I've been threatened with eviction for late payments, even though I've explained my situation multiple times. It feels like he doesn't care about us at all." Naya nodded, her heart aching for him. "Exactly. We all have stories like this. We need to share them, to show Mr. Caldwell that we are not just individual tenants. We're a community, and we will not back down." Mrs. Davidson raised her hand, her voice shaky but resolute. "I've been living here since I was a young woman. I've seen many things, and I'll tell you, Mr. Caldwell has always treated people like us as if we don't matter. It's time we stand up for ourselves." A round of applause erupted, filling the lobby with a sense of unity. Naya felt the rush of adrenaline as she saw the crowd rallying behind her. This was the moment they had all been waiting for, the moment they would take a stand. "Let's set a date for the meeting," Naya suggested, her heart pounding with excitement. "We can gather more stories and plan how to approach Mr. Caldwell together." They debated logistics, agreeing on a date for the following week. Naya felt a swell of pride as she watched her neighbors come alive with purpose. They were no longer just passive tenants. They were a force to be reckoned with. As the crowd began to disperse, Naya sensed a shift in the atmosphere. The earlier tension and fear had transformed into something powerful, hope. She exchanged contact information with several tenants, promising to keep everyone updated. When she finally returned to her apartment, Naya felt exhausted yet exhilarated. She sat on her couch, staring out the window at the fading daylight. For the first time in a long time, she felt like she was a part of something larger than herself. But as she began to unwind, a nagging thought crept into her mind. What would Mr. Caldwell do when he found out about their plans? Would he retaliate? The uncertainty loomed over her, a dark cloud on an otherwise promising day. The next morning, Naya woke with renewed determination. She knew she had to be ready for whatever came next. She spent the day gathering more information about tenant rights, making phone calls, and reaching out to local advocacy groups. She wanted to arm herself with knowledge that would empower her and her neighbors. As she walked to the community meeting that evening, Naya felt a sense of purpose guiding her steps. She was no longer just a tenant in a rundown apartment complex. She was a leader, a voice for those who had been silenced for too long. Arriving at the community room, she found it buzzing with energy. Tenants were mingling, sharing stories, and discussing strategies. Naya's heart swelled with pride as she realized the movement was gaining momentum. "Thank you all for coming," she said, stepping up to the front of the room. "Tonight, we're going to share our stories and discuss how we can approach Mr. Caldwell. Together, we will demand the respect we all deserve." As the meeting began, Naya felt a wave of empowerment wash over her. She was ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. This was just the beginning. As Naya Carter stood in front of the group, the energy in the room buzzed with anticipation. The community meeting had drawn a diverse crowd, young families, elderly residents, and single professionals, each with their own grievances against Mr. Caldwell. The gathering was a melting pot of frustration and determination, and Naya felt honored to be at the center of it all. "Thank you all for coming tonight," Naya began, her voice steady but charged with emotion. "It means so much to see our community united. We all know why we're here, to stand up against Mr. Caldwell's mistreatment. I want each of you to share your experiences, so we can understand the scope of what we're dealing with." The room nodded in agreement, and Naya gestured to an elderly woman sitting near the front. Mrs. Davidson raised her hand. A slight tremor in her voice as she spoke. "I've lived here for over 20 years. When I first moved in, this place felt like home. But over the years, Mr. Caldwell has become increasingly hostile. He's raised the rent without notice and has refused to fix basic maintenance issues. Just last month, my heater stopped working in the dead of winter, and he told me it wasn't his problem." A murmur of sympathy spread through the room. Naya felt a surge of empathy for Mrs. Davidson, knowing that she was not alone in her struggles. Jamal was next to share. I moved in with my daughter after losing my job. I explained my situation to Mr. Caldwell and asked for a little flexibility with my rent. Instead of understanding, he threatened to evict me. He has no compassion for our struggles. Naya's heart ached for the young father, the fear of losing his home palpable in his voice. It wasn't just about the rent, it was about the security of their families and the dignity they deserved. One by one, the tenants shared their stories, revealing a tapestry of hardship and resilience. Naya listened intently, taking notes on common themes, making mental connections between their experiences. She was struck by how similar their struggles were. It was clear that Mr. Caldwell's oppressive tactics were systematic, not personal. When the last tenant finished speaking, Naya felt a swell of determination. We have a lot of powerful stories here, and I believe we can use them to make a real change. Our first step is to create a formal letter addressed to Mr. Caldwell, outlining our grievances and requesting a meeting to discuss our concerns. The group nodded in agreement, and Naya could feel the momentum building. They spent the next hour drafting the letter, ensuring it captured the essence of their collective experiences. Naya took charge, guiding the conversation, and soon they had a draft that resonated with everyone. As the meeting wrapped up, a sense of camaraderie filled the room. Naya looked around at her neighbors, their faces filled with hope and determination. I'll type up the final version of the letter and distribute it to everyone so you can sign it. We'll send it off tomorrow. Thank you, Naya. You're really leading us through this, Jamal said, a grateful smile lighting up his face. Naya felt a rush of pride. We're doing this together. This isn't just about me, it's about all of us. After the meeting, Naya headed back to her apartment, a spring in her step. The sense of community had fortified her resolve, yet a nagging thought lingered in the back of her mind. How would Mr. Caldwell respond to their united front? The following day, Naya typed up the letter, carefully crafting each sentence to convey the gravity of their concerns while maintaining a professional tone. She included specific incidents from each tenant's experience, ensuring that their voices were heard. Once completed, she printed copies and distributed them to her neighbors, who eagerly signed the document. As the sun set, Naya found herself standing outside Mr. Caldwell's office, the letter clutched tightly in her hands. Her heart raced as she knocked on the door, feeling a mix of anxiety and determination. "Come in," he barked from within. Naya pushed the door open and stepped inside, forcing herself to maintain eye contact with the landlord. "Mr. Caldwell, I'd like to speak with you about a letter we've composed regarding our concerns as tenants." He looked up, his expression shifting from indifference to irritation. "What now?" Naya cleared her throat, holding her ground. "We've compiled a list of grievances that we believe need to be addressed. This is a collective effort from several tenants who have experienced similar issues." He chuckled, leaning back in his chair. "You think I care about a bunch of complaints? You all signed a lease. It's your responsibility to follow the rules." "Those rules should be fair, Mr. Caldwell," Naya countered, her voice gaining strength. "We are not asking for special treatment. We're simply demanding what is right. We deserve a safe and livable environment." As she spoke, she noticed the tension in his posture. For a moment, he seemed taken aback by her assertiveness. "What do you want from me?" he asked, his tone turning defensive. "We want to meet with you to discuss our concerns and find a resolution," Naya replied, her heart pounding. "We're willing to work together, but we need to be heard. Ignoring us will only escalate the situation." Mr. Caldwell's expression darkened as he leaned forward, a sneer creeping onto his face. "You think you can come in here and demand anything from me? I run this place. You're all replaceable." Naya felt a wave of anger wash over her, but she refused to back down. "We are not replaceable. We are families, individuals, and part of this community. If you continue to treat us like this, we will take further action." "Further action?" he scoffed, waving her off. "You really think I'm scared of a few complaints? You're wasting my time." Naya's heart raced, but she held her ground. "This isn't just about complaints. If you don't take us seriously, we will explore our legal options. We have rights as tenants, and we're prepared to fight for them." Mr. Caldwell stood up abruptly, the chair scraping against the floor. "Get out of my office, he barked, his face flushed with rage. "Consider this a warning, Mr. Caldwell," Naya said, her voice steady. "We will not back down." As she turned to leave, she felt a mixture of fear and empowerment. The confrontation had been fierce, but she had stood her ground. Outside the office, she took a deep breath, the air heavy with anticipation. Over the next few days, the atmosphere in the apartment complex shifted. Whispers of solidarity echoed through the halls as more tenants reached out to Nia, expressing their support. She organized another meeting, this time to discuss their next steps in light of Mr. Caldwell's refusal to engage. At the meeting, the room was packed. Nia could feel the energy pulsing as tenants filled the seats, their faces a mix of determination and anxiety. "We need to consider our options," Nia began, her voice steady. "Mr. Caldwell made it clear he isn't going to take us seriously. We need to explore what legal action we can take if he continues to ignore our concerns." Several voices chimed in, sharing stories of their own mistreatment. A young couple, Mariah and Kevin, spoke of the mold that had taken over their apartment, which Mr. Caldwell refused to address. "We're worried about our health and safety," Mariah said, her voice quivering. "It's not just about the rent anymore." Nia nodded, feeling a fire ignite within her. "We can contact a tenants' rights organization for guidance. They can help us understand our rights and what steps we can take next." The group discussed various strategies, weighing the pros and cons of each approach. Nia felt empowered by their engagement, the collective determination pushing her forward. She took notes, ensuring that everyone's voices were heard in the planning process. After the meeting concluded, Nia felt a sense of urgency. They needed to act quickly, and she knew they had to be well prepared for whatever Mr. Caldwell might throw at them next. The following week, Nia reached out to a local tenant advocacy group, seeking advice on how to proceed. They agreed to meet with her and a few other tenants to discuss their options. The sense of urgency buzzed in the air as they prepared for the meeting, each step bringing them closer to their goal. On the day of the meeting with the advocacy group, Nia felt a mix of excitement and anxiety. She gathered several tenants, Jamal, Mrs. Davidson, and the young couple, to join her. As they entered the office, a friendly woman greeted them. "Welcome. I'm Sarah, and I'm here to help you navigate your situation," she said, her warm smile easing some of Nia's tension. They settled into chairs around a table, and Nia shared their experiences with Mr. Caldwell, detailing the collective grievances they had compiled. The group listened attentively, nodding in understanding. "From what you've described, it sounds like you have a strong case," Sarah said, her tone reassuring. "You have rights as tenants, and it's important to stand up for them. We can help you draft a formal complaint and guide you on the next steps." Nia felt a rush of hope. "What can we do if he continues to refuse to cooperate?" "We can explore legal avenues," Sarah replied. "If he's violating tenant laws, you have options. We can help you file a complaint with the local housing authority, and if necessary, we can discuss pursuing legal action. The important thing is that you document everything, every interaction, every complaint, and every denial. You all have rights, and it's time to enforce them." Nia exchanged glances with her neighbors, their expressions a mix of determination and anxiety. This was the support they had been seeking, a lifeline in the storm of uncertainty. "Do you think we can actually make a difference?" Jamal asked, his voice tinged with hope. "Absolutely," Sarah said, her confidence unwavering. "Change can happen when tenants stand together. It's not just about you, it's about setting a precedent for others who might be facing similar issues. By taking action, you're not only fighting for yourselves, but also for the rights of future tenants." As they discussed specific actions they could take, Nia felt a renewed sense of purpose. They began drafting a formal complaint, outlining the various issues they had faced. Nia took the lead, her fingers flying over the keyboard as she recorded the collective grievances. After the meeting, the tenants left the advocacy office feeling empowered. Nia could sense a shift in their demeanor. They were no longer passive victims, but active participants in the fight for their rights. The camaraderie among them deepened, and Nia realized that they had formed a bond stronger than mere neighbors. Over the next several days, they gathered evidence, documenting everything that had transpired with Mr. Caldwell. Nia organized meetings where tenants could share their experiences, and they compiled a list of specific complaints, photos of issues in their apartments, and any correspondence with the landlord. As they worked diligently, Nia also felt the pressure mounting. She knew Mr. Caldwell would not take kindly to their actions, and she could sense the tension in the air. Each time she saw him in the hallway, he would glare at her, a silent warning that he was preparing for a fight. One evening, as Nia was working late in her apartment, she received a text from Jada. "Did you hear? Mr. Caldwell is planning on raising the rent again. The notices went out this morning." Naya's heart sank. "What? Is he serious?" "Yes, I just spoke to Mrs. Davidson, and she received a notice too." "This is outrageous," Jada replied. Naya's mind raced. "He's trying to intimidate us. This is his way of punishing those of us who are standing up to him." "Do you think we should confront him?" Jada suggested. "No," Naya replied, her voice firm. "We need to stay focused on our plan. If we confront him now, we risk losing the momentum we've built. Let's finish drafting the complaint and take it to the housing authority first. Then we can address the rent increase as a separate issue." That night, fueled by a sense of urgency, Naya and her neighbors worked late into the evening, finalizing their complaint. The document detailed every grievance with meticulous precision, and Nia felt a sense of pride as they prepared to take their stand. The following day, they gathered at the housing authority office, a mix of nerves and determination coursing through them. Naya stood at the front of the group, her heart pounding as she prepared to speak. "Thank you all for coming," she began, addressing the small crowd gathered in the waiting area. "We're here to file a complaint against Mr. Caldwell for his neglectful treatment of tenants and unfair practices." The staff at the housing authority listened intently, and Naya felt the weight of their collective experiences behind her. One by one, her neighbors stepped forward to share their stories. Each testimony added to the gravity of their situation, painting a vivid picture of the challenges they faced. After they submitted their complaint, the staff assured them that they would investigate the matter. Naya felt a wave of relief wash over her, but she knew this was just the beginning. As they left the office, the group shared a sense of accomplishment. They had taken a significant step, but Naya knew Mr. Caldwell would retaliate. They needed to be prepared for whatever he might throw at them next. A few days later, as Naya returned home from work, she found a notice taped to her door. Her heart raced as she read the words, "Notice of eviction. You have 30 days to vacate the premises." The shock reverberated through her. This was it. Mr. Caldwell was retaliating against her for standing up to him. Anger bubbled to the surface, but she knew she had to keep her composure. As she stepped inside her apartment, she immediately called Jada. "You won't believe what just happened. He's trying to evict me." "What? That's insane. We need to meet. This isn't right," Jada exclaimed. "I know. I'm going to gather everyone tonight. We can't let him get away with this," Naya said, determination rising within her. That evening, Naya gathered the tenants in the community room once again, her heart racing as she prepared to share the news. The room was filled with anxious faces, and she could sense the tension in the air. "Thank you all for coming," Naya began, her voice steady despite the turmoil in her heart. "I just received a notice of eviction from Mr. Caldwell. He's trying to intimidate us, and we can't let him win." Gasps filled the room, and Jamal stood up, his fist clenched. "This is ridiculous. We've done everything right. He can't just kick you out because you're standing up to him." Naya nodded, her resolve strengthening. "Exactly. This is a tactic to silence us. We need to fight back. We can't let him intimidate us or force us out of our homes." Mrs. Davidson spoke up, her voice trembling but resolute. "I won't let him push us around any longer. We've lived here for too long to let him take our homes." They spent the next hour strategizing, discussing their options, and the next steps to take. Naya felt the momentum building once again, the solidarity among the tenants fueling her determination. "We can file a counter-complaint," Sarah, the advocate from the tenants' rights group, suggested when Nia reached out to her. "Document everything and present it as evidence of retaliation. You have rights, and you shouldn't be afraid to assert them." Naya felt a renewed sense of purpose. "We need to gather evidence, talk to the other tenants who received eviction notices, and document the harassment. This isn't just about me anymore. It's about all of us." As the meeting concluded, Naya felt a surge of hope. They were no longer just individuals facing a common enemy. They were a community united in their fight for justice. That night, as Nia lay in bed, she couldn't shake the feeling that this battle was just beginning. Mr. Caldwell had underestimated them, and she was determined to show him the strength of their unity. Naya woke early the next morning, the weight of the eviction notice still heavy on her mind. As sunlight filtered through her bedroom window, she felt a mix of anxiety and determination. The fight against Mr. Caldwell would require everything she had, and she wasn't going to let fear dictate her actions. She needed to rally the tenants, and fast. After a quick breakfast, Naya gathered her notes and headed out to distribute flyers about the upcoming tenant meeting. She wanted everyone to know that their fight wasn't over. As she walked through the hallways of the apartment complex, she knocked on doors, her heart racing with each response. The first door to open revealed Jamal, his face a mixture of concern and support. "Hey, Naya, heard about what happened. We're all really behind you." "Thanks, Jamal. I'm holding a meeting tonight to strategize our next steps. I could really use your voice and support," Naya said, her resolve strengthening as she spoke. "Count me in," he replied, determination flashing in his eyes. As she continued down the hall, she encountered Mrs. Davidson, who was on her way to collect her mail. "Good morning, Nia," she greeted, her smile fading as she saw the worry on Nia's face. "Mrs. Davidson, I wanted to let you know about the meeting tonight. It's important we all come together. I received an eviction notice from Mr. Caldwell, and we need to stand united." The elderly woman's eyes softened with concern. "You're not alone, my dear. I'll be there. We have to show him he can't intimidate us." Naya felt a surge of gratitude. "Thank you. It means more than you know." As the day unfolded, Naya spread the word, and soon the community room was buzzing with tenants eager to discuss their next moves. That evening they gathered once again, a mix of anxious faces and steely determination filling the space. "Thank you all for coming," Naya began, her voice steady. "We're here to talk about the eviction notices and what we can do to fight back. This is a turning point for us." Jamal was the first to speak up. "We need to gather as much evidence as possible. Document everything. Every time he harasses us, every maintenance issue he ignores. We need to show that he's been negligent." Naya nodded, her heart swelling with pride. "Exactly. We'll create a shared document where everyone can log their experiences. We'll also reach out to the Tenants' Rights Organization for guidance on how to file a countercomplaint." Mrs. Davidson raised her hand. "I've been keeping records of every maintenance request I've made, and I even have photos of the mold in my apartment that he refuses to address. I can share those." "Perfect," Naya replied, her mind racing with ideas. "If we can present a united front with evidence of neglect and retaliation, we can strengthen our case." As they continued to strategize, Naya felt the sense of community deepening. No longer were they just individuals facing a common enemy. They were a collective force, ready to demand their rights. The following day, Naya and a few other tenants met with Sarah from the advocacy group. In a cozy office filled with pamphlets and legal resources, they shared their experiences, and Sarah listened intently. "It's crucial that you maintain a detailed record of everything," she advised. "Document dates, times, and any communication with Mr. Caldwell. This will be invaluable if you decide to take legal action." Naya took notes furiously, feeling a sense of empowerment grow within her. They discussed the possibility of filing a complaint with the local housing authority regarding the eviction notices and Mr. Caldwell's failure to address maintenance issues. "Don't be afraid to take this to the media if necessary," Sarah suggested. "Public pressure can sometimes force landlords to change their behavior." Naya's mind whirled with possibilities. They could shine a light on Mr. Caldwell's injustices, and if they could gather enough support from the community, they might just turn the tide. As they left the meeting, Naya felt a renewed sense of urgency. They had a plan, but time was of the essence. Mr. Caldwell was not the type to back down easily, and she could feel the tension mounting. That evening, as Naya sat in her living room, reviewing her notes, she heard a loud knock on her door. Her heart raced as she approached, unsure of what to expect. When she opened it, she found Mr. Caldwell standing there, his expression dark and menacing. "What do you want?" Naya asked, trying to keep her voice steady. "You think you can just rally the tenants against me?" he sneered, stepping inside without an invitation. "You think you can threaten me and get away with it?" Naya stood her ground, refusing to back down. "I'm not threatening you, Mr. Caldwell. I'm simply standing up for my rights and the rights of my neighbors." He stepped closer, invading her space, and Naya felt a surge of fear. "You have no idea who you're dealing with. I can make your life a living hell if you don't back off." "Is that a threat?" Naya replied, her voice firm. "Because if it is, I'll be sure to document this conversation." Mr. Caldwell's eyes narrowed, and for a moment Naya thought he might lunge at her. But then he stepped back, a twisted smile creeping across his face. "You think you're so clever, but mark my words, you're playing a dangerous game." With that, he turned and walked out, leaving Naya shaken but resolute. As she closed the door, she could feel her heart pounding in her chest. This was no longer just a battle for her. It was a fight for every tenant in the building. That night, Naya gathered the tenants once more, sharing the details of her confrontation with Mr. Caldwell. "He's trying to intimidate us, but we can't let that happen. We need to be stronger than ever." The group rallied around her, their expressions a mix of determination and fear. They discussed their next steps, vowing to document every interaction with Mr. Caldwell and to continue building their case against him. Over the next few days, the tension in the apartment complex reached a boiling point. Naya received several calls from tenants who had also been threatened by Mr. Caldwell, and she could feel the anxiety mounting. They needed to act quickly. One evening, as Nia prepared for another community meeting, she received a text from Jada. "Have you seen the eviction notices? They're everywhere. I think he's trying to scare us all into leaving." Naya's heart sank. "We need to meet right away. This is getting out of hand." That night, as they gathered in the community room, Naya could see the fear etched on her neighbors' faces. "I know this is overwhelming," she began, her voice steady, "but we must stay united. We've come too far to turn back now." Jamal spoke up, his voice strong. "We need to take action. Let's organize a protest outside Mr. Caldwell's office. Show him that we won't be intimidated." Naya felt a rush of excitement at the idea. Yes, a protest will send a clear message. We need to show him that we're not backing down. As they planned the details of the protest, Naya felt a surge of hope. This was their chance to stand together and make their voices heard. They designed signs, prepared chants, and coordinated a date to gather outside Mr. Caldwell's office. The following week, the day of the protest arrived. Naya felt a mix of nerves and excitement as she joined her neighbors outside the office, holding a sign that read, "We deserve better." The atmosphere was charged with energy, and she could see other tenants arriving, their faces filled with determination. As they gathered, Naya took a moment to survey the scene. The group was larger than she had anticipated, and she felt a swell of pride as she looked at her neighbors standing together. This wasn't just about her anymore. It was about everyone who had ever been mistreated by Mr. Caldwell. When the protest began, Naya took the lead, leading chants and encouraging her neighbors to voice their frustrations. They marched back and forth in front of the office, drawing attention from passers-by. Nia could see the media arriving, cameras flashing as reporters began to document their stand. "Stay strong," Naya shouted, her voice echoing through the air. "We're not going to let them push us around anymore." As the protest continued, Naya felt a rush of adrenaline. This was the moment they had fought for, the culmination of their struggles. They were standing together, refusing to be silenced. Suddenly, the door to Mr. Caldwell's office swung open, and he stepped outside, his face twisted in anger. "What is this nonsense?" he shouted, looking at the crowd with disdain. "You really think this will change anything?" Naya stepped forward, her heart pounding. "It's not nonsense, Mr. Caldwell. It's a message. We are not going to be intimidated anymore. We demand respect and fair treatment." The crowd erupted in cheers, their voices rising in solidarity. Mr. Caldwell's expression faltered for a moment, and Nia could see the uncertainty in his eyes. "You think you can just disrupt my business like this?" he barked, attempting to regain control. "I'll have you all evicted." "Go ahead," Naya shouted back, her voice unwavering. "We're prepared to fight for our rights." The crowd erupted in cheers once more, their voices echoing in the air, a powerful chorus of defiance. Mr. Caldwell took a step back, clearly rattled by the united front before him. Nia felt a surge of empowerment coursing through her veins. They were making an impact, and it was undeniable. "You'll regret this," he spat, retreating into his office, slamming the door behind him. Nia turned to her neighbors, their faces bright with exhilaration. "We did it! We sent a message today, and we'll keep sending it until we're heard." As they continued to chant and hold their signs high, Naya felt a sense of unity and purpose that she had never experienced before. This was just the beginning of their fight, but together they were strong enough to face whatever challenges lay ahead. The following days were a whirlwind of activity. Naya and the tenants received unexpected support from local advocacy groups and community members who had heard about their protest. News outlets began to cover their story, shining a light on Mr. Caldwell's questionable practices and the tenants' fight for justice. As the media attention grew, Naya felt a renewed sense of hope. They were no longer just a small group of tenants. They were part of something bigger, a movement that resonated with others who had faced similar struggles. During a follow-up meeting with the advocacy group, Sarah applauded their efforts. "You've gained significant traction. With the media coverage and the community rallying behind you, Mr. Caldwell will have to take your complaints seriously. We need to prepare to take this to the next level." Naya nodded, her mind racing with possibilities. "What do you suggest we do?" "We can file a formal complaint with the housing authority, citing not only the eviction threats, but also his neglect of maintenance issues and his refusal to address tenant complaints. This documentation will be essential." With Sarah's guidance, Naya and the tenants compiled their evidence, presenting a strong case against Mr. Caldwell. They meticulously documented every encounter, every complaint, and every violation of tenant rights. As they prepared to submit their case, Naya received a call from the housing authority. "We've received your complaint and are conducting an investigation into the issues raised," the representative said. "We take these matters seriously, and we'll be in touch soon." Nia felt a wave of relief wash over her. They were finally being heard, but even as she felt hopeful, a part of her remained cautious. Mr. Caldwell was not a man to be underestimated, and she knew he would retaliate. Later that week, as Naya sat in her living room with Jada, they discussed the upcoming housing authority meeting. "What if he tries to intimidate us again?" Jada asked. Concern etched on her face. Naya took a deep breath, her determination solidifying. "We have to be prepared for anything. We're going to present our case with confidence. We have the evidence, and we have the community behind us. We won't let him intimidate us again." On the day of the housing authority meeting, Naya arrived with her fellow tenants, a mix of anxiety and determination coursing through them. The room was filled with representatives from various organizations, and she could see Mr. Caldwell seated at the front, his expression smug. As the meeting began, Naya felt her heart race. They took turns presenting their evidence, detailing their experiences and highlighting the neglect they had faced. Naya stood tall, unwavering as she spoke about the eviction threats and the impact on her community. Mr. Caldwell attempted to dismiss their claims, but the mounting evidence in the tenants' testimonies left little room for doubt. The representatives listened carefully, nodding and understanding as they absorbed the information. When it became clear that the housing authority was taking their complaints seriously, Naya felt a rush of exhilaration. They were finally being validated, and the tide was turning in their favor. After the meeting, the housing authority representatives assured them they would investigate the claims thoroughly. Naya and her neighbors left the building, a sense of triumph swelling within them. As the days turned into weeks, the pressure on Mr. Caldwell increased. The housing authority's investigation revealed numerous violations, and the community rallied around the tenants, creating a petition to demand changes in management. Naya felt a sense of pride as she watched her neighbors unite, their spirits lifted as they fought for what was right. They were no longer just tenants, they were a community standing together against injustice. Then one afternoon, Naya received an unexpected call from Sarah. "Naya, I have good news. The housing authority has ruled in your favor. Mr. Caldwell is required to rectify the maintenance issues and is facing penalties for his treatment of tenants." Naya's heart soared. "Really? This is incredible." "Yes, and more importantly, they've mandated a meeting between you and Mr. Caldwell to discuss his management practices. It's time he understands the repercussions of his action." As Nia hung up the phone, she felt a flood of emotions, relief, joy, and a sense of victory. This was what they had fought for, and it was finally happening. The day of the meeting with Mr. Caldwell arrived, and Nia felt a mixture of nerves and anticipation. She and several tenants gathered in the conference room, the atmosphere tense as they awaited Mr. Caldwell's arrival. When he entered, he seemed different, humbled, perhaps a little shaken. Naya stood tall, refusing to let him intimidate her again. "Let's discuss the violations and how you plan to rectify the issues," Sarah began, her tone professional yet firm. Mr. Caldwell shifted uncomfortably as Nia and her neighbors presented their case. They outlined the improvements that needed to be made and firmly asserted their rights as tenants. "I understand that I may have made some mistakes," he finally admitted, his voice lacking the bravado it once had. "But I've been running this place for years. I don't want to lose my business." Naya seized the opportunity. "It's not just about business, Mr. Caldwell. It's about treating people with respect and dignity. We deserve to live in a safe and healthy environment, and we will not settle for anything less." As the meeting concluded, Naya felt a sense of closure wash over her. They had stood together, united, and had made a difference. Mr. Caldwell was forced to acknowledge their concerns, and the tenants had reclaimed their power. In the following weeks, the changes began to take effect. Maintenance issues were addressed, and the atmosphere in the complex shifted. Nia felt a sense of community flourish as neighbors connected and supported one another. As the months went by, Naya continued to advocate for tenants' rights, becoming a voice for those who felt unheard. She organized community events, fostering a sense of belonging and unity that had long been absent. Standing on her apartment balcony one evening, Naya looked out at the sunset, a feeling of accomplishment washing over her. They had fought for their rights and had emerged victorious, proving that change was possible when people came together. In that moment, Naya knew that this was only the beginning. The struggles they had faced had forged a stronger community, and she was determined to continue advocating for justice and equality. Naya Carter, once just a tenant facing adversity, had become a leader in her community. Through her courage and determination, she had inspired others to stand up for their rights, creating a ripple effect that would resonate for years to come. The significant changes in the apartment complex were a testament to the power of unity. And with each passing day, Naya felt the warmth of community enveloping her. Together, they had turned their struggle into a movement, and she was proud to be a part of it. You've made it to the end. If you enjoyed this story, I am confident that you'll love the next one appearing on the screen now. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, and please give this video a like. I'll see you in the next one.